a year ago when we did our first parliamentary event, the purpose was to sort of show the potential of solar and how solar could get and enable us to inspire young people to make great things and change the world. And at the time, I made a very bad joke, which was that it takes 20 people to put solar on a school, 1 to install it, and 19 people to get out of the way. And my ask at the time was to everyone work harder to getting those people to move a bit faster. And I'm glad to say that actually a lot of good things have happened in the last 12 months. There has been significant progress, in particular the announcement that GB Energy is going to get behind solar and funding 200 to 250 schools through the DFE, and the work that Sharon and her team are doing is one great piece of that, piece of news. And also a growing number of MPs went home and talked to their councillors, and those councillors are starting to work with us and engage with us to help those people move a little bit faster. But one of the things that recurs in my mind this year when I look back at it is that the question a professor asked his students, which was, what's the difference between theory and practice? And the answer is, in theory, there's no difference, but in practice, there is. And this year felt very much like that, because GB Energy worked very closely with the DFE, which made complete sense. Theoretically, that's where you should be working with. But in practice, it hasn't worked quite as easily as well as that. But before I come back to that, I just want to tell you a little bit more about Solar for Schools. So I started Solar for Schools 10 years ago to create a platform, a software platform that brought funders, installers, and schools together to enable solar to happen on those schools, and then use the savings and the income from looking after those solar panels on those schools to do the amazing education work that our education team does here today, and you're seeing that demonstrated by various students today. So thank you to all of you for having attended and come and shown everyone else what you're learning and what you're doing. The reason we focus on the students and young people is that they A, have the time to learn, and B, they're the most powerful lobby out there. Often they ask me, so what can I do? And I say, well, can you persuade your parents to do something, a change? And most of them say yes. I said, well, there's 2 billion young people, you only have to persuade 2 or 3 adults each, and that's the world. And going back to Michael's point, we can all work together to change the world. And that's where your power is. Through your parents, you have great influence. And so that's what and why. Then back to the sort of in theory and practice. So in theory, it made complete sense for the DFE to work with GB Energy to roll out solar. In practice, there's a couple of challenges. One of them was that the DFE had to set up a huge mechanism to do this delivery in a very compressed timescale. And they had to go and find a whole bunch of consultants, and those consultants had to find a whole bunch of installers. And by the time that all happens, it takes 6 months. And then the second point was that whilst the DFE is in charge of education, they don't own and control the buildings. And one of the big things that we all forget is that the landlords of those buildings, they're the biggest barrier in terms of trying to get solar built. They need to be the ones that we get out of the way faster. And it doesn't really quite address that point. So that's the second point. And the third point, and one of the challenges this year, we thought we were going to do 120 schools this year. In theory, it's totally possible. In practice, we achieved about half that many. And the third point is because if you say to a whole bunch of schools, we're going to give you free solar panels, and that's about 200 schools, what do all the other 99% of schools suddenly do? They don't do anything. And so all the pipeline of projects that were happening through community energy groups and councils across the country stalled, and that means that they've slowed down. But I'm not complaining. I mean, I think the fact that we've done this and made a step is a great step in the right direction. The key thing is the 3 lessons, or the number of lessons that we can learn from it. And the good news is it does seem that those lessons are beginning to filter through. We've got more and more councils working with us directly and looking at using our software platform to allocate money efficiently to projects. And one of the key things that came out in GB Energy's latest statement is they want to work with community energy groups, councils and combined authorities to crowd in money rather than crowd out money, which happened slightly, unfortunately, with the way that GB Energy did this time around. And for those of you not familiar with the term crowding in or crowding out, I'd like to use the National Grid as an example of that. The National Grid, rather than funding and giving away entire solar systems that would be forgotten, they topped up projects funded by other community energy groups to make it happen. And that means that a project that a community energy group could not have funded on its own received enough income for the economics to work. And that means that the National Grid gets a much greater impact because they're crowding in money to do that. And that example is, I think, the example I would like many of us to take away today, the concept of how GB Energy going forward can work alongside community energy groups and councils to crowd money in and achieve more. And I think on that note, I also then want to say that community energy groups are a key part of this too, because the 300 plus schools that we now manage, which enables us to deliver education to about 10,000 students a year at the moment, all at no cost to taxpayers, while saving over the lifetime of the systems about £25 million. All of that is through, or mainly funded through community energy groups. And they're a key part of the going forward pillar. And I'd like to, at this point, introduce you to Barry, who works for Sheffield Community Energy, one of the community energy groups that we work with, to illustrate how that could work. Over to you, Barry.